Hello, I'm a man in my 50s living in Gyeonggi province. I've been living an ordinary life so far. So I thought that the happenings in drama on TV belonged in a different world and didn't apply to me. But not too long ago, such an absurd thing happened to me. I have an eldest son and a daughter whom I love and would give up my life for, and a loving wife who is very gentle and dedicated to our family. I am currently helping some guy I know at a factory in a rural region. For working 6 days a week from Monday to Saturday, I earn about $3,000 a month. To be honest, it's hard for a family of 4 to live on my pay that barely covers the basic necessities. I live like this now, but I didn't always work in a factory for someone else from the beginning. Before, I was doing exporting in Seoul. I used to also own 2 apartments in Seoul and drove an expensive foreign car. In addition, I had quite a lot of cash and liquid assets and took my family once or twice a year to travel abroad, so I was living comfortably an enviable life. But the downturn happened so fast. At first, a small contract started to go awry, but quickly, like dominoes, my whole business collapsed right in front of my eyes. I had worked so hard to build my business. I tried everything trying to survive, but it didn't work. At last, even my parents and the in-laws attempted to help, but it wasn't enough to cover the huge losses. As a last resort, I sought help from my friend who was in business. Since I considered him my best friend, I swallowed my pride and begged. But his reply was cold. He told me just to find work and give up my business as he felt it would fail anyway. I grabbed him by the neck and we had a big fight. There's no hope. You'll only accrue debt for delaying it. What? How did I build this business? Do you know what it took for me to come to you to ask for your help? And from that day on, I swore to myself that I'd never ask for help from anyone again. I couldn't throw away my last pride. When my business went bankrupt, my daughter had the most difficult time. I had already paid my eldest son's college tuition and had sent him abroad for a language course as well as a backpacking trip to Europe to help his future career that money could buy when my business was doing well. But it was different with my younger daughter. She was still a high school student and was not attending a public but a private high school that specialized in arts. Her transfer to a public high school was inevitable. Simply, the tuition at a private high school for art was expensive, and high training fees had to be paid separately, which I couldn't afford them under my current circumstances. Thus, my daughter, who dreamed of going to an art college, had to transfer to a public high school. Instead, I promised to enroll her in a private art tutoring center to help her preparing for the art college entrance exam. Belatedly, I found out even those fees were not cheap. Before, my wife took care of all those things with the money I earned, so I didn't know at all. Working fully from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m. 6 days a week to make $3,000 a month to pay the art tutoring fee of over $1,000 a month was becoming a burden. It was to the point of my being afraid of the due date to pay the tutoring fees. To be honest, I even resented my daughter. Going to an art college was not a simple thing. Even if she was accepted, getting a job in line with an art major still would not be easy. Besides, doing well after graduating from an art college, it's expected to have studied abroad in one's portfolio. But such a scenario was totally out of our own affordable category. Despite our stark reality, my daughter still insisted on studying art, while I wished and hinted to my wife that she should quit art and just study nursing or accounting for more accessible employment upon graduation. I said, "Going to an art college is when our finances are good. It can't be in our current situation. Let's have her reconsider by changing her major now. If we can't support her, Jian will face a harder time." But my wife was adamantly against it. She said she couldn't stop our daughter's dream with a bright future just because of a temporary financial difficulty. We will be more miserable down the line when we have to listen to our daughter's resentment. My wife wanted us to provide as much support as we could possibly squeeze out. Frankly, I didn't take her words too kindly. The one who had to bend my back doing hard labor in a factory from Monday to Saturday was just me. To me, my wife still didn't seem to assess our reality. She had to face that she was no longer a wealthy wife in Gangnam. The house we live in now is completely different compared to before. We moved from a luxurious condo with several young security guards to a shabby and moldy multi-unit residence. And yet, my wife would go out dressed as a revered wife of a wealthy CEO. She kept carrying the luxury brand handbags that I bought her as a gift when we were affluent. If she sold them to a second-hand shop, they would have brought us some needed cash. "Honey, wouldn't it be better to sell that handbag now? If you go out with that in this poor neighborhood, people would gossip that you are carrying an imitation." Don't say what you don't know. A woman should have at least one luxury brand handbag. Unbelievable. Are we in a situation to be so pretentious? Would it be better to sell the handbag and use the money for a better purpose? She wasn't thinking about her husband's suffering. Then one day, it was my payday. I bought a roasted chicken being sold from a truck on the way home. My daughter really likes chicken. My daughter was painting a picture in her room. I asked her to come out and eat chicken, but she refused. "Hey, isn't chicken your favorite? What happened?" "Dad, everyone at the academy is enrolling for a special program except me. How can I go on as I'm too embarrassed?" "A special program? What does that mean?" My wife approached me when she saw my puzzled look. She said, "I told her she couldn't enroll because it's too expensive. She's angry because all her friends are doing it." The tuition for the special summer program at the Art Touring Center was $2,000, twice that of current tuition. When I heard about the expensive fee, I lost my appetite. Although it was a ridiculous amount for our situation, seeing my beloved daughter's sad face, I desperately wanted to raise the money somehow. Then, my wife's luxury brand handbag caught my eye. "Honey, isn't it a good time to sell that handbag now?" However, she suddenly got angry at me, saying she will borrow the money from her sister who lives in the United States. My wife's older sister runs a large hair salon in the US. When we went bankrupt and lost our home, it was her who lent us money to lease the current place. She told us that we didn't need to pay back and not to lose hope. I was very grateful for her help and would always be indebted to her. However, when it comes to be our children, one becomes shameless. In the end, We again asked her older sister for another handout. Of course, we would pay it all back later when things improve. That's how our daughter got to enroll in the special program for the summer along with her friends. But after that incident, my wife and I became somewhat distant. My wife was no longer cheerful as she used to be. She looked depressed, as if she finally realized that we were now poor. Our conversation was much reduced. I thought it was all because of my fault. I felt that money could buy whatever, even family harmony. That's the reality. In fact, most of the problems in life are caused by money. Then, my boss asked me if I could work on Sundays as well. I learned that with overtime plus weekend pay, the amount was quite handsome. I agreed to work overtime as I thought I would be able to save money for our daughter's college tuition. Thus, the factory provided lodging and meals, and I could go home once every 2 weeks. Therefore, I could only hear about our family affairs on the phone with my wife. Our phone conversation was always the same and mundane, such as, "What did you eat?" or "What's going on at home?" My wife's answer was always the same, that everything was fine. As such, I got used to factory life little by little. However, as I lay in bed in the dorm room and thought quietly, I realized the next day was my wife's birthday. I almost panicked, but was relieved that at least I remembered. I immediately telephoned my boss, and I was able to get 1 day off. Then, I bought a whipped cream cake from a bakery in the neighborhood and bought my wife's favorite fruit, peaches, albeit expensive at the market, a whole $10 worth. I was determined to have a nice talk with my wife. I wanted to have back our close relationship as we used to have. However, no one was at home when I arrived. I telephoned my daughter, who said she would finish late from her special arts program. My wife did not answer her phone at all. It was strange because it wasn't as if she was working, but she did not come home even though it was past 9 at night. In the end, I fell asleep with only the birthday candles on the cake. I didn't know how long I slept when my wife woke me up. I looked at the clock and it was 11 o'clock. "Where have you been all this time?" "I went to our alumni reunion." I became angry at hearing the word reunion. I never attended any social parties ever since my business failed. Her husband even gave up the weekend to work so hard, yet the wife is going out to meet her friends to have a good time. It seems she went out often, not only the day I came home unexpectedly. My wife didn't know that I was suspecting her and seemed to be happy. She said since I bought her a birthday cake, she asked me to light the candles anyway. However, I was too angry with her, then I just came straight back to the factory. From the factory, I called my daughter and asked. My daughter hesitated when I asked if her mom goes out often. According to my daughter, my wife was going out practically every night. Whenever my daughter asked where she was going, my wife simply answered that she was meeting her friends. I snapped at my daughter for not saying anything about it until now. My daughter replied she was worried that a conflict could arise between us, so she didn't say anything. I sought counsel from my boss, who is close like an older brother. After listening, he said with a grim face that my wife might be having an affair. It seems like an affair, and after listening to you, it hasn't been a while. Yes, I definitely thought so too. My wife didn't work, So where does she go every night? Since she fell from being in high society to this meager life, I thought she probably wanted to find an escape. However, I couldn't ask my wife directly. I really didn't know what I would do if she really was having an affair with another man. All I have left is now a family. Should I go on pretending that I don't know about it? I thought my wife's affair was just a temporary fling, like a sudden passing rainstorm. Then, something happened that I had to stop working. At work, I tripped on the stairs and fell. The doctor at the hospital ordered me to stop working for 3 weeks for the cracked leg bones to heal. My boss also advised me to take this opportunity to go home and rest for a while. However, I didn't dare to return home. I was afraid to see my wife, but I had no choice as the only place to go was home. Eventually, I packed up and headed home. When I got home, my wife looked flustered that I came home so unexpectedly. But soon she started fretting about my leg. It made me feel like we went back to our old days. I shouldn't say this, but I even wish that my wife wouldn't think about the other man after seeing me hurt like this. However, I have to go to dinner with a friend tonight. What should I do? I will cook some porridge, so please heat it and eat it, okay? When I heard that from my wife, I couldn't hold down my anger any longer and blew up at her. She looked quite shocked. Despite such a situation, she still went out. I felt so wrecked that I threw out all of the porridge that she cooked into the sink. Thus, I tried to persuade myself that she could have gone out to meet her friends while doing dishes on my limping leg. Then, I suddenly thought it might be better to pack up in Korea and go to America to start a new life. So, I made a call to my sister-in-law. After an exchange of greetings, I thanked her for sending tuition money for my daughter's special program. What do you mean? I never sent any money. What special program fee? She asked. What? My wife definitely told me that you had been sending the tuition for my daughter's special program, weren't you? My sister-in-law told me that she never sent any money except the deposit for the lease of our place. Besides, my wife said to her that our situation was improving and that we are okay. Instead, my sister-in-law seemed puzzled by my phone call. However, she said that if we could come to America, that she could help us to settle in. After the phone call with my sister-in-law, I became more confused. The source of the tuition for the special art program was the culprit. My wife did not return home until after midnight. I stayed up all night that day. It was almost 2 in the morning when I heard the door opening. I quietly went into the living room. My wife was coming in with sweat dripping down her face, even though it was cold outside. Her hair was also messed up. My wife didn't see me, and she immediately went into the bathroom and took a shower. I struggled with many questions about how she got the money and where she goes every night. That's how I stayed up all night, and the next day I asked her why she came home so late. Then she became gibberish and flustered. I lost track of time chatting with other women. We chatted over coffee, then we went to karaoke having fun, so I didn't notice the time. However, how could she go out and chat practically every night? If she's going to fabricate, she should do it properly. I immediately caught my wife on her flimsy lies, but I couldn't bring myself to confront her about what she did last night. In the end, I decided to secretly follow my wife to find out the truth. I told my wife that I had something come up at the factory that I needed to return to work. She seemed to worry, saying how could I go to work with an injured leg. However, I assumed that she must be rejoicing inside. I left home and stayed near to pass the time. At 8 p.m., my wife came out of the house. When she got on a bus, I caught a taxi to follow the bus she was on. I followed her for about an hour. When she finally got out of the bus, it was downtown in Seoul. It was past 9 already. My wife got off the bus and walked briskly to somewhere. I followed her and realized that it was a neighborhood I knew well. My office used to be there when I had my own business. The whole time I followed her, I wondered why she had come here of all the places. My curiosity was answered sooner than expected. It was the building where the office of once my best friend was located. Suddenly, my legs lost all strength and started to shake. It seemed like all the puzzles were coming together. It was so obvious that my wife was having an affair with that friend. When my friend and I got along well, he also got along well with my wife. He remained single, being anti-marriage, but he used to joke if there is a woman like my wife, that he would get married right away. It was clear that he had been coveting my wife for a long time. My wife also was positive toward him and used to tell him that if he got married, he would make a good husband and a good father. It was clear that something was going on between the two of them. I didn't know, but he must have paid for my daughter's special program. I followed my wife into the building with a decision to give up on everything. But when I entered the lobby, a night security guard stopped me. "What are you here for?" The woman who just entered. I came looking for her." "Who? You mean CEO Park's friend?" CEO Park is that friend I had mentioned earlier. It seemed that she must have come here so often that even the security guard knew her face. At that moment, I thought I would lose my mind from anger. Aggressively, I pushed my way and headed for the elevator. The guard tried to stop me, but I quickly got in the elevator and pressed the floor where my friend's office was. When I got out of the elevator, I saw the office was dark with the lights off. All his employees seemed to have left work. It was then, in the distance, I saw a light leaking from the crack in the door of my friend's office. I heard a voice talking inside. My head was full of pictures of my friend and my wife making up inside the office. With such a humiliating and wretched heart, I opened the door to the office, but my friend was alone. He was talking on the phone, and at my sudden visit, he looked puzzled. "What are you doing here without any notice?" I yelled out nevertheless. "Where is she? Where did you hide my wife?" "What are you talking about all of the sudden?" "What do you mean, where's your wife?" I limped and grabbed my friend by the neck. Then my friend became bewildered. When I saw his look, I was sure then that he was having an affair with my wife. "What's wrong with you to play around with someone else's wife? Do you want to see me dead?" "Take your hands off me first and let's talk. It's not what you think." "If it isn't, why does my wife come to your office every night?" It's not like that. Oh, that's so crazy." My friend was in a hurry to make excuses. I lifted my fist to punch the hateful bastard in the face. But at that moment, I heard my wife's voice. "Honey, stop it! I'm here." I turned my head to see my wife standing by the door, dressed in blue cleaning lady outfit, with a mop in her hand. "Hey, why are you dressed like that? What's with the mop in your hand?" "I'm sorry I couldn't tell you earlier." My wife plopped down on the floor and started to sob. My friend just then explained the situation. A few months ago, he said he got a call from my wife asking to refer a job. He said that at first he arranged for a bookkeeping job because he couldn't have her do rough labor. But my wife said she didn't want to inconvenience anyone because she didn't have enough work experience and refused it. He had no choice and ended up introducing her to a cleaning job at his company. She worked for about 5 hours during the weeknight, but at his discretion as the CEO, he paid her more. Only then I understood why my wife came home sweaty every night and took a shower. I felt so pathetic about myself to be suspicious of my wife having an affair, not knowing her suffering. Seeing her standing wearing a shabby blue cleaning outfit, I rather preferred her to dress up well and go out and have an affair so that I wouldn't feel so sorry and pitiful as I was. I had judged her to be an immature wife who was ignorant of the world. I was a fool for resenting that she was such a woman. I couldn't raise my head from the shame as I thought about my wife who had never worked such a job before, cleaning the building every night to pay for our daughter's tuition. She married the wrong man like me, and at her age she was suffering. It was driving me crazy and I hated myself to death. I knelt in front of my friend to say sorry for the misunderstanding. My friend got me up and told me not to do this. He said he should have told me earlier and apologized to me instead. My wife and I returned home together that night. My wife confessed everything. Then she took out the luxury handbags from the closet. Those were what I had asked her to sell. My wife, weeping, opened the bag and showed me the tag. "Honey, this is actually an imitation. I sold the real ones earlier and used it to pay for the household expenses." "Why didn't you tell me earlier? I didn't even know that and only blamed you for nothing." My wife didn't want to hurt my feelings, so she sold the luxury brand, replacing them with imitations that looked the same. It was a handbag with a story. I had given it to her for our 20th wedding anniversary. I hugged my wife and cried for a long time that night. I felt sorry for my wife, who had sacrificed silently for our family even during our difficulties. I was grateful that she was my wife. From that day, I quit my job at the factory and returned home. Now, I work doing deliveries during the day. At night, I work as a driver on call. It's harder than factory work, but I'm much happier to be with my family. Despite my objections, my wife is still doing the cleaning work. She insists that we need to save every penny we can earn for our daughter when she goes to college. So as a couple, we are working together to face the difficult situation. Then after a while, we had good news in our household. It was news of our son's employment and our daughter's acceptance at an art college. Just as if you lose some, you gain some. Our family lost some money, but we gained more happiness. My wife and I often talk about our post-retirement these days. We are wondering about going to America where her older sister is after our daughter graduates from college. We also discussed traveling again like when we were newlyweds. My wife had many ups and downs, but I believe there's a rainbow at the end. My wife and I are heading toward that rainbow today, and do my best to live the fullest as I am genuinely grateful to my wife. Thank you for listening to my story so far. I hope your family is full of happiness.